Welcome to Your Future in Sales and Marketing, a podcast that helps you make great career decisions to get the most out of your career journey. We'll introduce you to the AXR network of established senior leaders and a hand-picked group of future aspiring leaders who have it all in front of them. You'll learn what it's like in the top job and how to get there. Your hosts from AXR's specialist sales and marketing recruitment team will also land bonus episodes for you on how to work with recruiters, write a resume, and smash an interview, as well as our very popular market updates. It's the podcast that has it all. You can't get this career advice anywhere else. Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Future in Sales and Marketing. I'm Andrew Cannock and I'm a specialist sales recruiter with AXR Recruitment and Search. Today we're joined by Ben Gibson. Ben is the general manager of Mark Anthony Brands, an established global business with a fast-growing presence here in Australia. Ben's career journey is a lesson in taking the path less trodden. He's an entrepreneurial spirit who started in big FMCG and has since carved his own path. There's some fascinating insights in here for you to enjoy. Hope you get a lot from it. Ben, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on.
No worries, Andrew. Thanks for inviting me.
How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good. I'm excited to dive into this one. You've got a super interesting journey for us to unpack. Before we dive into career, tell us a bit about life before career. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up in inner city Melbourne, so North Carlton. I went to school in Melbourne all the way up through to university age, and then went to university in Canberra. So got out of Melbourne, had a really good nucleus of friends there. Everyone sort of seemed to be doing the same thing, and I wanted to do something different, spread my wings a little bit, live on campus and just sort of see something different. So I went to Australian National University and lived at Johns College there, which was a great move.
That theme of wanting to do things a little bit differently is something that will come through in the story as we get into it. Something else that comes through in your journey as we'll talk about is a real entrepreneurial flair. Is that something that showed up through childhood or through your early years at all?
Not so much childhood, I would say, but definitely I looked at my friends' parents in high school that were successful and kind of, I guess, ran their own race. And they were all kind of entrepreneurs or had family businesses in place. I had friends that would go and work for their family business, like during uni holidays and post-uni, post-school sort of thing. And always sort of had the dream of kind of being able to give that to my kids and just, have my own destiny and all that sort of stuff. So that's probably where it stemmed from. I probably didn't show the traits or come up with sort of ideas to execute until a little bit later on in life.
Yeah, until you got a bit more experience under your belt. Tell us how that experience started. How did your career launch?
So I actually launched my career as an accountant. So I did accounting at school, commerce at university, did go down a very kind of traditional path of accounting and did find it quite dry. And as I sort of got into industry, so I started in sort of tax business advisory. As I got into industry, I wanted to add more value and not just sort of report on what's happened. So then sort of steered in towards commercial analysis. So I became a commercial analyst, found that really interesting and exciting, great way to understand business performance, but also highlight business improvement opportunities. So I started my FMCG career as a commercial analyst at Lion, and that was a great experience. I was partnering the national sales team and found some really good opportunities to help the sales guys drive a really big sales results through some of the analysis I did, some of the, I guess, growth programs that I'd sort of modeled up and supported them with. So that was how I started.
And then how did the pivot into sales and into the commercial world happen?
Yeah, so the pivot into sales happened through partnering with the national sales team at Lion. This was in the wine division, and Coles Liquor had a bit of a growth incentive plan where they were wanting to grow with the top 3 or 4 wine businesses. And then if you weren't in that tent, in that growth plan, then just by way of them focusing on growing the sort of 3 or 4, you were going to definitely hit a massive roadblock and go into decline. So I had modeled up this growth plan, which focused on delivering a certain level of growth and a growth incentive check. So it ended up being $1 million in as a growth payment to Coles Liquor. We took in a novelty check to present it. That was awesome. Part of the theatre of the actual thing. My idea, loved it. The sales director was awesome. He actually invited me to go along to the meetings with the national sales team and just talk through the structure of how I'd modelled up the growth plan. Part of that growth plan was to unlock the owned brands and drive mass growth in those, which would result in an overall like 20% growth. It was like 400% growth in like a key brand that was our most profitable brand, and also a sort of a trend category, New Zealand South Blanc at the time. So that was awesome. I caught up with the sales director after that sort of 3 or 4 month planning and execution, and said loved being involved in the sales side of things, loved the customer engagement and interaction. Do you think I could just move into like a national account manager role if one became available? To his credit, he said, yeah, you could. I mean, you've sort of shown it already. You could easily step into that. But if you're serious about sales and want to go down the sales path long term, be a sales director, you're going to have a better, broader understanding of the sales roles, the sales capability, the challenges of sales. If we found you a secondment into like a field sales role where you're knocking on 100 doors a week, you're getting rejected by like 80% of them, you're understanding that, you're working through ways of overcoming that rejection, you're refining your little sales spiels, your pitches, you're looking at different angles on how you can get that ratio up from 20% yeses to 30% to 40% to 50%. You can go and make some mistakes because, one call in a field sales thing, if you get it wrong, it's not the end of the world. If you get it wrong at national account level, then, that could have a material impact on the overall business. So I begrudgingly took on that advice. It was actually, it was in the long run, it was an awesome opportunity. I ended up finding I got sort of supported with a 6 month secondment into a field sales role. In that role, I did find it lonely. I was like, used to sort of sitting in the head office and kind of interacting with all the colleagues and stuff all the time. And suddenly I was like on the road, just seeing customers and, speaking to some other reps, like maybe once or twice a day, but like just, missed that kind of camaraderie of just, having lunch with your work buddies and seeing them every day and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, from a growth perspective and the long term, it sort of set me up for success to give me better empathy and understanding as a sales director that what you're asking the field sales guys to do, it's not easy. You've got to make it easy for them as possible by setting them up for success, giving them the right tools, having a journey plan system, having some point of sale, having the right sales capability training to help get them on the right path. Yeah.
And even though those field sales roles are a little bit harder to come by these days, we still advise them as a brilliant starting point for anyone coming into FMCG, because the acceleration of learning that you get to the point that you just made is really unparalleled. And then after Lion came your sort of first step into that slightly more entrepreneurial sort of small business world with VOC Beverages. Tell us a bit around how that came about and what that next chapter of career looked like for you.
Yeah, so that came about actually through one of the national business managers at Lion that I had been working with closely. He had taken like a national sales manager role at VOC. He'd sort of seen the way I'd worked, liked the way I worked. We got along personally well as well. And he said, there's an opportunity to come across and be national account manager looking after Endeavour Group and Coles, which was always, for me, where I wanted to go. I wanted to be looking after the most influential, biggest customers that can make the biggest impact if you get it right. So, and he knew that. So he took this role. He didn't have massive experience in that space. He was more kind of on-premise and independence. Anyway, so he gave me the tap on the shoulder. I went across to work with him, and yeah, it was a great business to really learn a lot from. He ended up moving on quite quickly. It wasn't the sort of, I guess, the rough and readiness of an independent business, family-owned business that is entrepreneurial, but also less process-driven, less probably secure. It wasn't for him, so he moved on, and actually that kind of gave me the opportunity to move into that national sales manager role quite quickly. So 6 months into being the national account manager, I'd kicked enough goals to kind of get the keys to sort of run the sales team after that, which was awesome. It was a super entrepreneurial company, always looking at trends, lots of sort of research trips to LA to see what was happening in the US, to see what was happening at Expo West, which is just happened last weekend in LA again. So yeah, awesome opportunities to see how things are created, learn every sort of step of the way, sit on an exec team, go to S&OP meetings, and just get that sort of wider understanding of how an FMCG business works.
So another example of kind of in the deep end and accelerated learning, which has been a bit of a theme for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then tell us about how you then found your way through to what you're doing now with Mark Anthony.
Yeah. So Mark Anthony Brands, currently the general manager in Australia. So have set up the business, effectively set it up here in Australia. So Lion had been distributing White Claw for the last 5 years in Australia. Lion and Mark Anthony Brands came to a decision in November 2024 that they were going to part ways middle of last year. So mid 2025, go separate ways. I think for Lion had Kieran Haiketsu, which was going well. So that probably suited them. For Mark Anthony Brands, Lion had Kieran Haiketsu. So to own the narrative, to have more focus, more control, really dive in and get the White Claw brand humming and reinvigorated in Australia, and really kind of look at innovation opportunities as well and bring them to life. That was the opportunity for Mark Anthony Brands. So yeah, we've been, I guess, trading for 7 or 8 months now in market direct. It's been really good so far. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, taking that step back. So from VOC Beverages, I had been there sort of probably 5 years. I'd seen some failures in terms of new brand launch. I'd seen some success. So 23rd Street Distillery was a really big success. It's still probably number 2 in craft spirits in the Australian market behind Four Pillars. So great opportunity to sort of lead and see success on a startup brand, but also like there were some failures along the way where just didn't get one or two little ingredients right in terms of either the product or the launch plan or the branding. Just saw failure and success along the way. Understood how to sell things into products, in new brands, new products into national accounts particularly, but also into on-prem groups and other independent groups and stuff like that. So came away from that business going, I know how to do kind of every piece of the puzzle, even sort of looked at third-party manufacturing with some friends' brands that wanted VOC to manufacture. So taking them through that process gave me that kind of back-end supply chain understanding as well. And then obviously the commercial finance background, understood how to do pricing and all that sort of stuff. So felt like I was in a good place to go and start my own brand. So I started Saintly Hard Seltzer in 2020. We actually launched before White Claw, inspired by White Claw, funnily enough. It's a full circle moment now. So launched that, everything from getting a liquor license to setting up a third-party manufacturer to selling in to tracking to marketing, all that sort of stuff. So touched everything along the way with that business. Left that business after 3 years. I've been doing some consulting for other businesses where my partner and I looked at other FMCG brands that had a strong brand awareness and marketing name, because I think that's the hardest part of FMCG is having a must-stock brand or getting a brand to a level and scale where it should be in all stores and customers are sort of seeking it out and wanting it. So we worked with a couple of brands to help them get some more scale through innovation. So that was a really cool, I guess, consulting period for a couple of years. And then what I loved about that was just working with a whole bunch of different founders and seeing their energy, seeing the way their teams worked. But what I sort of missed was you go and work on a project, say, so Naked Life was a project that I worked on. You go and launch a new range with them. You get to know their team. You're sort of embedded in their business for 6 months or 6 to 12 months, and then you're sort of moving on to the next thing. Whereas I was like, I'd love to sort of just stay and kind of run a business. So that was kind of that's kind of where I am today. That was the opportunity came up. I actually saw it in the Shout, the notification in January last year that said, Lion and Mark Anthony Brands are sort of departing ways, and that Mark Anthony Brands is going to go direct in Australia. And so I reached out to Rich, who was from Mark Anthony Brands, on the LinkedIn post, or the Shout post, directly on LinkedIn, and said I was interested in a role, and ended up being a 5-month interview process. But after the 5 months, got the role and have really enjoyed building a team around me and delivering some really good results so far.
And take us inside what it's like to be a GM in a small scaling business. What does your day-to-day look like?
So day-to-day now is quite different to what it looked like in that first 6 months. The first 6 months, it was just a massive checklist and just working through starting to hire people, getting a liquor license, setting up customers, trading terms, making sure the order to cash process is there. So when we get an order, we actually get paid and we actually know how much we should get paid and can tick all that boxes. So some of the less sexy stuff, but critical to ongoing success, and I guess not dropping the ball 6 months down the track because you're not sure if you're getting paid the right amount, or you're over it, your discounts are too high or something like that. So just making sure the foundations were there. So setting up process, people, and then trying to get into that performance space. So that was the first 6 months. We're now kind of operating probably in that sort of more so that was sort of forming, I guess. And now we're sort of looking at stepping into that performing stage where, we've got, Monday morning meetings with the SLT team. We've got exec meetings once a month. We've got monthly performance reviews. So we've got a really good cadence of meetings that we have monthly just to kind of get on with our day job.
If someone is listening to this and they're working in a large business, doing a sales role or doing any role, and they go, do you know what, one day I'd love to do my own thing, or I'd love to do a leadership role in a small, fast-growing business like you are now, what would your advice be to them? What can they be doing to get themselves ready for that?
I think behaviorally being curious. So curiosity, asking loads of questions, trying to understand themselves and what they're good at and where their sort of gaps might be in terms of their either experience or capability. Then trying to, I guess, match their skill set and capability into a role that might give them that first footing into that different experience. But I mean, speaking to someone like yourself, Andrew, would be a really good first step to go, hey, Andrew, this is my skill set. This is what I want to do. Are there what are the businesses out there that might take a punt on somebody that hasn't necessarily had that direct experience of either a bigger leadership role in a smaller business or cross-functional kind of scope to go and get some more experience? And then just sort of working out, right, what are those steps that I need to do over the next 3-6 months to try and bridge some of those gaps to then show up successfully in an interview and get one of those opportunities. But yeah, I think also it's taking some risks and throwing yourself into the deep end. Like, don't always need to go up, 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 up. It's like taking some side steps or some steps backwards, like I did in the sales rep role, to then look at that long-term sort of scope of this is where I want to be in the long term. It's not always like a linear path up to where you want to get to.
Yeah. And something that we covered when we spoke about doing this podcast was the breadth of experience that you've had earlier in career and how that's now enabled you to do what you're doing now, because you are exposed to so much on any given day, and you have to know you have to know a little bit about lots of things at the very least, so that you've got some sort of credibility, some exposure, some relevant experience, knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Just elaborate on that breadth of experience piece and how you go about getting it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a really good point. And funnily enough, like over the when I was sort of deciding I want to get back into like a corporate role or a sort of a job as opposed to either my own thing or consulting, there was when I was looking at certain different roles, a lot of them were just like, they wanted basically for me to have been working in their direct competitor doing the exact role. And they just wanted this cookie cutter, right? You've done that role, so we can place you in here. But what I'm finding in the role I've got now, if I hadn't have had, say, the accounting, tax, business advisory stuff that I'd done when I was like 22, there's been some ATO things that have cropped up. At least there's been like GST, there's been BAS statements, there's been excise tax things. If I hadn't have had some of the experience that I had, I would have been really flying blind on what to do or how things work. So, for example, we had PwC giving us advice on business activity statements, and they were saying you need to do them monthly, whereas I know that we could do them quarterly. That would save some admin, some time, some resource fees. Excise, I knew that can be also done quarterly, probably monthly to start with, but quarterly. Advice was, it needs to be done weekly. I sort of called them out on that, and that sort of showed that, you can do them monthly or quarterly. So just sort of knowing some of those things, the liquor license, because I'd gotten a liquor license before. The guys in Dublin were looking at, spending lots of money on lawyers to find out how to do it and what needs to be done. The lawyers will always take as long as they can take to get to where you need to get to. But it was sort of just cutting through a fair bit of noise on that expensive consulting stuff to be more efficient and get a result quicker and more cost effectively.
Yeah.
From a supply chain perspective, just sort of like looking at the way supply chain had been done. So I did lots of product development when I was consulting, and like the whole forecasting for raw materials and purchasing raw materials, making sure you're doing that in line with your production plans, but having certain products that are really secure and you're going to have permanent ongoing ranging. You can order cans for 4 or 5 months instead of just because the production cycles are quarterly. So you want to over order on something like cans so that if you beat your forecast in 3 months, then you're not sitting there going, we haven't got enough cans to do another production run. You've got a bit left out, you've got a bit of extra. So then you can just slot in an extra production. So that's something that hadn't been considered initially with our supply chain team. So just being able to bring in some of those little things from my experience in other roles and other kind of hands-on roles, I was able to bring that to the table, add value, and sort of avoid some of the potential mistakes or shortfalls in this role.
Yeah, and it's a message we try and land with people all the time, particularly those in commercial roles where there is ambition to progress, and progress to people normally means upwards movement. Yeah. But don't miss the opportunity to get that breadth of experience while you can, because if you go vertically too quickly, sometimes you can be shut out from actually gaining the experience that you need. What does the future hold now for Mark Anthony Brands and for Ben Gibson?
So for Mark Anthony Brands, like we are very ambitious in the Australian market. We do want to get to a decent size market share in RTD, not just in hard seltzer or light RTD. We want to be a meaningful player in the Australian market. We've got a really strong team that we've set up. We've got the right resources. We're really well supported to enable us to achieve that. We'll achieve that through going back to our roots from a marketing perspective and really kind of getting engaged in our community and making sure that we are relevant and we're spoken about and we're loved and have that brand love that we see in other markets, particularly in the US. We've also got a really strong innovation pipeline. So we will look to innovate. We'll look to bring out some product in other light RTD categories just to open ourselves up from being a hard seltzer brand to a lifestyle brand. So that's really exciting. And then we'll look at different new brands that we'll bring in from the US. The US market is booming in RTD. There's the Australian consumer is on YouTube. They're getting very kind of Americanized with pop culture and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll bring out some brands that the Mark Anthony Brands US team are succeeding with, and we'll bring them to the Australian market over the next few years.
Exciting. And what about you? Where do you go from here?
Look, I'm just really, at the moment, I'm just still head down, just looking in this role and just trying to make a real success of it. We've got our year end at the end of this month. We're going to overachieve for this financial year. We've got a budget for the next financial year that's been set. It's just about, like for me, just looking at the next 12 months at building out plans to make sure we achieve that. And then also looking sort of 3 years down the track to go, how do we kind of become that market leader or have a decent share of market position in the RTD category in Australia? From a role perspective, really happy with this role, can see myself in this role for the next few years. Yeah.
Great. It's a brilliant opportunity for you because it brings together so much of what you've done previously as we've touched on, and it's a really, really exciting journey. So looking forward to seeing where it takes you. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Appreciated our calls. We spoke like pre me joining Mark Anthony Brands. He gave me some really good advice, and yeah, it's been really good just connecting again.
Awesome. All these endorsements that Ben has given me, which are very lovely, they are not paid for in any way, shape or form, just for anyone listening. Thanks so much, Ben. Appreciate you coming on.
Cool.
And we'll speak again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ta.
That was another episode of Your Future in Sales and Marketing. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to reach out to us for any conversations you need to have around your career or talent decisions for your business. We are always here to help you. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast from AXR Recruitment and Search. We're passionate about helping you get the most out of your sales and marketing career. Keep listening as we bring you more career insights and advice from Australia's inspiring sales and marketing leaders. See you next time on Your Future in Sales and Marketing.